Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue. So I'm looking at Houdini tutorials like I sometimes do in my 47th attempt to learn that program. And I often find one and think, okay, I'll try this in MODO and see what I can do. So this is one of those, and not quite as elegant as Houdini, but also probably a lot simpler to do if you don't like to apparently work in code half the time. So this is just a low-res model that is modified to look kind of like, I don't know, paper mache, or not paper mache, more like origami. And it worked out pretty well. Got a couple different versions here. There's one kind of looking up at you, sort of a graph paper, I guess. Look, there's his head. Staring at the moon. Arctic fox, that's what the base model was. And there's another one, sort of a paisley texture. There's a halftone texture. Got a red one here. Anyway, just kind of messed around with it. There he is again. And yeah, so it's, you know, kind of fun to screw around with, and you can really just plug in any mesh into it. This particular one, I used a model that I downloaded from Sketchfab. So let me give credit to that. So here's the model from Sketchfab, this cute little Arctic fox, and modeled by Lilly, exclamation point. Lilly, exclamation point, does a lot of really cool low poly models, very colorful animals. And yeah, so I just did a quick search for low poly model. This guy came up, and so I thought, yeah, I'll use this one. So all credit to Lilly, exclamation point, for this, and I'll put the credit in the comments section as well. So you don't have to start with a low poly model for this. It helps. You can start with the high poly model. The Houdini tutorial on Intagma, they started with the Stanford Bunny, which is just, you know, a scanned model, and they did some poly reduction on it to get triangles. But honestly, the Stanford Bunny is ugly as hell, and I'm sick of seeing it in everything. So we'll try the cute fox instead. So I'm just going to do this like I did last time. I'm going to just walk up the mesh op stack here to quickly show you how it's done, and then start over from scratch for a sort of step-by-step. So if you want to go just sort of stop after the walkthrough here and try it on your own, you can, or if you want to hang around for the whole video, that's fine too. So the first thing I did before I went to the mesh op stack is I just did a little bit of cleanup on the fox itself. I would, you know, if I saw long, thin triangles, sometimes like, you know, maybe like this one, I would delete an edge and make it a quad. I want, you know, triangles with a decent amount of area. You don't want long, thin triangles for this to really work, because there's going to be some splitting and insetting and thickening, and you're going to have a lot of crossing polygons if you get too many thin triangles. So the first thing I did on this guy is split the edges. So you can see I just split them like that. And then I did a couple of things early on. One of the things about procedural modeling and MODO, there's often things you do at the beginning, like creating UV maps or selection sets that, you know, you're going to use later. And you may not realize it at the time. You can always go back earlier in the stack and make these, you know, selection sets and things like that if you realize you need them. So I didn't exactly plan this out. I just, you know, realized I needed some UVs, so I made them early, and you know, did stuff like that. So here's a, let me just select the UV map here so you can see it. So there, I'm just doing an atlas map on the UVs there just to get some nice planar UVs and get that done early before I start subdividing and doing other things. I also create some selection sets. This one created one called plane edges. These are things I'll use later. So if I, you know, go over to stats and look at my selection sets, you can see I created a selection set of all the edges of these planes here. Did that early on. Also set a weight map based on a Falloff Operator, and the Falloff Operator is looking at the area of each polygon, so we get different weights for each polygon. So you can see, like, you know, the bigger polygons are brighter red, while the smaller polygons are more pinkish. So there's more of an effect on the bigger polygons, and I'll use that throughout this modeling process to apply a greater effect to the larger ones. And for instance, on push, I'm pushing out the larger ones using that set weight. You know, I'm using the fall off that I created, or the weight map I created as a weight map fall off to get a larger effect, a larger push effect on these, you know, bigger polygons than the smaller ones. All right, so the bigger ones are pushing out more, just getting a little more gaps between these guys, but I don't want too big of a gaps between the little guys. And then I'm going to do a spike in the middle. You can see that spike happening in the middle there. Let me actually deselect that vertex map so you don't have to look at that the whole time. Yeah, so we got a spike in the middle, and I'm assigning another selection set here. I'm essentially creating a vertex selection set. Again, stuff I'll be using later of the corners. So you can see I'm selecting all the corner vertices here. I'm doing that by selecting the center vertice here for the spike operation. I'm using a select by previous to the spike operation and selecting that middle vertice and then inverting it to get the corner vertices and then saving that to a selection set. All right, so then I start subdividing to get some more polys in there, and I do it twice because MODO subdivide does not have any sort of iterations on it, so I got to do it twice. Boom, boom, and here, you know, eventually you'll start seeing MODO does not like subdivides, man. Nothing slows down MODO more than subdivides, but so we got a couple subdivides, and we've got a thicken operation going on, and the thicken I'm using that weight map fall off again, so these bigger polygons thicken more than these smaller polygons. You'll see that's thickening less, right? So look at these two selected polygons. The smaller polygon with the less area is thickening less than the larger one. So we did that by being smart early on and creating these maps and fall-offs and weights and things like that. So we got a thicken going on. And then I'm going to assign another selection set here. And this is, I believe, the edges of the thicken. Yeah, select by previous operations, so thicken side. So I'm getting another, this time a polygon selection set. So again, you can see it over here in my stats. If I go over here and look at the polygon selection sets, I can look at my sides, and I'm using this later on for it to UV those sides because they haven't been UV'd yet, right? So MODO does a good job of passing vertex information along the chain, so to speak, as new vertices are created. They inherit the VMAPs of their predecessors. And so if I look at this UV map here, I've got all these guys that I did way down here, but it's included the subdivisions. Those are inheriting those UVs. But I don't have these sides yet. So I'm going to create a new UV map right here, and I'm using a selection operation to grab those via the selection set. So I grab those and create an atlas map on those. Now those are in here, but they're kind of overlapping. So I do a Pack UVs on everything. And now that's going to probably take a second here, but this Pack UVs, obviously, you can remove some of the distortion from the atlas operation and also make sure they're not overlapping. So I'll just give MODO a second here to think about it, because nothing slows down MODO like subdividing and packing UVs and about 5,000 other things. So that is another difference between doing these types of things in MODO and Houdini. Houdini is shockingly fast, and here it's sometimes shockingly slow. So I'm actually going to pause instead of wait this one out and restart the screen recording when it's done thinking about where these little pieces should go. And we're back. It wasn't so bad, was it? Okay, so yeah, I guess you can see why that takes a while to think about. So there's our UVs, really filling up the UV space there. It looks good. Okay, happy, happy. So we've got a pretty good looking fox here with UVs, but we need to crinkle up our panels a bit. So one thing I did back here on the spike is I did push it down a little bit, right? So the spike used, did he use a fall? Yeah, so he used the Falloff Operator again. So these larger ones push in, indent, so to speak, deeper than these smaller ones. Again, that's a nice, use of the polygon area for, modulating an effect. But I want to use that selection set we used way back when, the corners, and just grow it up one to create a weight map. And so we're going to create a weight map with the corners. We're going to grow it one, and then we're going to also smooth the weight, because we're going to use this weight map to add sort of a corner crinkling or curling effect on the corners of each of these pieces here. And there's nothing that slows down MODO more than subdividing and packing and setting weights. So we're going to wait again while MODO thinks. So there's going to be a decent amount of waiting around, I think, in this tutorial. Yeah, let me just speed these things up, Foundry. Okay, MODO's done thinking. Let's select the weight map. there you have it. So we had the corners, we expanded it one with the grow selection operation, and now I'm going to smooth it out with the smooth weight mesh operation there. So we've got some nice VMAP operations in MODO now, so you can do some nice procedural weight map stuff. You can even animate this stuff. So again, waiting for it to smooth the weights out. Almost there though, almost at the top of the stack. Okay, it is now smoothed out, and you can see the problem with MODO being so slow. Like, none of this is interactive at this point. If I'm going to change this, smooth weight amount here, it's just back to me staring at a spinning screen for a while until it gets done calculating. And other programs can do this stuff real time, and MODO just needs to be better at it. Now, I don't know if it's recalculating stuff down lower in the stack for some reason. Like, it shouldn't have to recalculate, a UV or a subdivide to do this, but I don't know. Maybe it does. Anyway, our push is using weight map fall off, and it's using this fall off here, and we're just pushing these weighted areas out a bit to get that crinkly effect or that sort of corner push effect. Okay, so there's our pushed up edges here. You can kind of see how that's working. You see some of these edges are getting pushed here. You see this line going up, so we're pushing the edges out just a little bit, not a ton, but just enough to give it some bit of an organic feel. I'm going to click the subdivide one more time on. Then I'm going to set it to Catmull Clark with this here, and I'm going to go take a nap, and I'll come back in a half hour when it's done calculating. Okay, so now it's calculated, and I've got my sub D Fox here, and it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty good. It looks like, kind of puffy, paper origami type, right? And you can do some things with the thicken command to, get it to look. You can either go farther in on the thicken or adjust the scale to close these gaps up a bit. And you can also do some displacement. If you look at, for instance, this image, this is rendered in Octane, but there's just a little bit of displacement on, we have good UVs, and so there's some little bit of displacement on the edges here, and it closes up those gaps as well. You can see that down here a little bit, right? So, you can fix those with displacement, or you can, adjust some of your settings. You just try not to intersect everything. So let me go back to MODO here and just talk about this a little bit. I know this is sort of turning into a MODO, I'm complaining about the speed a lot, but it's important. I'm going to be more critical of this program, I think, in these videos, because it just needs to be, it needs to be faster. It needs to be a lot faster. In the second half of the video, I'm going to complain a lot about the, this business here, adding these operators and some really nonsensical stuff that goes on, and you have to deal with over and over. And I honestly can't believe made it out of development. And, I don't expect this to be as fast as Houdini. And the thing is, it's, if you watch the Houdini video on Untagma, there's a lot of it's a lot more complicated. There's some, writing variables and doing some coding or vex and, doing some loop operations and stuff, which would be nice to have in MODO, by the way. But in MODO, you can get, 90% of the quality of the effect really quickly just by being clever with some of the mesh operations and being an artist about it. But the mesh ops are so slow once you get a number of these on here, you're no longer an artist. You're just sort of, your artistic ability is severely limited by sitting around and waiting for this thing to calculate. And I don't expect it to be as fast as Houdini. I'm not expecting that. But it's not that Houdini's twice as fast or 4 times as fast. On something like this, Houdini's on the order of probably 100 times as fast. And that's not an exaggeration. This type of setup in Houdini takes a fraction of a second to calculate. In MODO, it takes 30 or 40 or 50 seconds. And that's 100 times as fast. So it's an issue. But anyway, moving on. So that's the quick rundown. We can do the step-by-step next. All right, here's our Fox from Lilly, ! And I'm going to get this process started just by clearing up a couple of these, just making some quads in here and making sure I don't have too many little triangles. I don't want any little triangles. Some of these thin ones, like on the ear, I suppose I don't know. I like that edge. I mean, I do like that facet, so I'll keep it, but I might get into a little trouble with that. Something's down here on the feet. We can delete some quads, I guess, if we want, just to make it a little more interesting. Again, you don't have to make it totally symmetrical, right? Make it a little bit different, but you know, okay, something like that when you're making this. And then we'll get started with our mesh operations. So I'll just actually, I don't think I need this direct modeling tools at all for this. I'll just close that here. And first thing I'm going to add is an edge split. So there it is right there, edge split. And you're going to be adjusting this several times. So Omno Hall is already set up for most of this stuff. So just press C Channel Hall and you can kind of screw around with it. And like I said, you'll be probably going back and forth, depending on what model you start with, and adjusting this initial split distance a couple of times throughout this. Just, you know, as your other mesh operations start to pile up, you'll probably want to make it a little more, a little less big, but we can start here, go here. I don't remember what I did in the last one, but we'll start with that. And then let's get some UVs on these guys right off the bat. So I'm going to pop up my UV port there and just do a create UV map. So we got that right there, create UV map, and we're going to do a atlas map, and we'll call it texture. And we can also, you know, select that UV map. We can select it here, right there. Or, you know, what's nice with mini props is you can select your maps right from mini props. If you're in, you have an item selected and just an item selected, the mini props, so that item will pop up and you can select it right there. So you can see that's what our mesh operation did, and created those, and that's good enough for now. We're not going to pack them now or waste any time. We'll get to that later when we create more for the sides of these guys once we thicken them. And I'm also going to do a selection set. Now I can't remember actually if I used these edges in the first one or not, but this might be nice to create these. Another thing you can do is, you know, run curves along these edges and do renderable curves to add some more just visual interest to your artwork here. But we'll just create a selection set. So assign selection set. We'll do an edge one. We'll call it planar edges. And it's just everything right off the bat. So it's just, if you look over here in your stats, you should be able to see it, you know, right after you create it. And so all the edges are selected. And once we subdivide these and everything, these do not propagate. So the selection sets do not propagate. So if I subdivide these polygons, I add a subdivide here. The planar edges, you know, we still only have the edges. We don't get it in the middle here. Unlike the UV map, where the UVs did propagate, we did get a new polygon or vertex there, and, you know, it picked up the UVs of this UV operation. So, which is pretty cool. So, all right, so we can close the UV window. We've got a selection set there. Now let's create another thing we're going to use throughout this, and that is the weight map on the area of the polygons, because we want to affect large polygons like that, like this one, with, you know, pushes and thickens and stuff like that, and spikes, more than we want to affect these little ones, because we don't want to get much of intersecting polygons on these little tight areas here. So we need to use a operator here. So we're going to create a an operator. And instead of a selection operator, we're going to create a Falloff Operator. So we want a set weight. So there's a create weight mop and a set weight map. They kind of basically do the same thing. Like a set weight can grab a previously existing weight map and change the weight, but it will also create one if one doesn't exist. So you don't really need the create weight mop. So you do set weight mop, and we're going to create one called a map name called area. And it's going to be a weight map, and we're going to be on polygons. And we're going to do a Falloff Operator here. So I'm going to go look in the tool pipe. Actually, before I do that, if you click Select Map, here's the weight map here that we just created called Area. It's not selected, but you can select it right here if you want to see it in the viewport. Just make sure your weights are visible, which is this little button right there. In default and advanced viewport, you should be able to see it, as well as the VMAP viewport. So right now it's 100% on everything, right? But we're going to modulate this with a Falloff Operator. So we'll do a Falloff Operator. So where is it? Right here. And we're going to drag that in the schematic, or just add selected to add it to the schematic. And we'll look at the channels available to us. And these are the channels, or the parts of the polygons, or vertices or whatever we're able to operate on. So we can operate on point index or polygon area, which is we want, point count. So we can operate on polygons with a lot of points, or say if we just wanted a weight map on polygons with 3 points, we can do that with this operator. And here we're actually going to use area, right? So I drag it in, and then I'm actually going to right click and separate the channel because it's just easier visually to just plug it in like this to the weight, area into weight, instead of having it connected there and plugging it back into itself. It just makes more sense to the human brain. So we're going to push it over like that, and I'm going to plug it in. So now these weights are modulated by the area. So these big ones are more pink because they get more weight than these little ones. But I'm not getting enough weights anywhere, so I'm going to modulate this again or remap it. So there's a couple of ways we can modulate these weights, right? Because we want this big one to be pretty much red, 100%, and these little ones, we don't want them 0. We want them to be getting some of the values. So there's a couple things we could do here. One, you could just add a math multiply. So I can go in here and do like a multiply, basic math multiply node. And just, whoops, there's like 3 of them I just double clicked in there. Don't want 3, just 1. So delete those guys and just plug it into that one and do like that to put it in between. You'll see it went to 0 because we're multiplying it all by 0. If I go like 10 or something like that, that's a little more what we're looking for. Maybe see what we got here, maybe like 5. And so that's some pretty good separation, but I want to bump up these little ones here. So again, there's a couple things you can do. I can go in here and I can adjust this gradient. So I can bring up the bottom ones by middle mouse dragging these up like that. You can see them coming up like that. You could even do it in a non-linear fashion by adjusting the handles like this. So maybe something like that. So, that looks pretty decent, although I think I want a little more on these. So again, I might just drag that up a little bit. It's really up to you. You can also go in here and do like a clamp node should work, I do believe. So I can put in a clamp and I can put in the input and the output here, and we clamp a 1 and then just channel haul the minimum until we get something that we like for level of pinkness for these smaller guys here. So either way, I think that's looking pretty good in terms of what we may want. Unfortunately, the show weight values does not work with these procedural weight maps, so it's all showing 0 there. So I don't really know what these are. That's a bug. It'd be nice if that got fixed. But anyway, so now we've got this in. So we've got a weight map with various weights on according to the size or the area of the polygon. Actually, I like the way this looks. So you can use this weight map to shade this as and get on your materials and colors and things as well to modulate those. So it's kind of a cool thing to do. I actually kind of like the way this looks right now. Okay, so we got a weight map, and now let's do a push. So we'll go to our add operator. We'll do a push, and our push, we're going to push polygons, not vertices. And we're going to modulate our push with a weight map fall off. And our fall off is going to... Now, we could go in and do this Falloff Operator every single time, but I'm just going to use the weight map. It's nice to bake these things into a weight map, right? And you just select the weight map. So I'm going to select the weight map. So, and here, this is me complaining about this preset browser. It's like, this needs to be cleared out. My previous search term should not be living in my browser the next time I go up here and force me to come in here and clear this out and add a selection operation or a tool pipe operation, every time I do that. So anyway, go into the tool pipe. I'm going to add a weight map fall off, and I'm going to select my area map. And then when I push, and again, you can just press C for channel haul since this is already selected here, although I don't want... This is interesting. So this was like a channel haul bug where it's picking up channel haul for all subtools. Actually, it's not a bug. That is behaving properly. So yeah, so you can right click for weight map and drag for weight map fall off strength, and left click and drag for pushing. So you notice that when I push, the larger polygons push out farther than the smaller polygons. And that's by design, right? So I want a little bit bigger gaps in there. And this is something, again, we'll probably go back and tweak and adjust a little bit. But I want to do it per polygon size. And I can also right click and drag my fall off and the strength of that. So yeah, pretty cool, like Omnihall. And okay, so we've got our push in there, and now we're going to do our spike. And so double click escape to get rid of the channel hall there. And I'm going to add a spike operation. There we go. And I'm also going to modulate this by the weight map fall off. Oops, I keep pushing selection set. I don't want a selection set. I want a weight map fall off. So we can, in fact, we can use the existing one here. So we can go to existing, and I'll just pick the same weight map fall off that I used for the push. So if you look at this and I select it, it's using the same one. One of the things I didn't do here, which I should have done, is I need to get in the habit of this, is add a stack. So we're going to add a mesh op stack here. And I'm going to twirl this down. I'm actually going to drag all this stuff into my stack. And you'll see it does a nice job of keeping it in order. And the reason I do that is just much nicer in the schematic. So if I add my stack to the schematic here, all of my mesh operations are in order. And I can also rearrange them here in the schematic, where if I didn't have a stack, they'd just be, as you are familiar with MODO, scattered all over the place. And so, here our spike and our push use the same fall off. And so we, look at these guys, and now here, these, however, are not so clean. And I never remember the shortcut keys, just like Control up down arrow, Control Alt up down arrow, something like that. Oh well, something like that. Nope. Shift Alt. Okay, so there is ways to do this. Yeah, so a tool pipe of our spike, our fall off. Of course, these aren't in order. So much about what I said about order. At least it looks good over here. This is all messed up. Okay. Yeah. Come on, MODO. Come on. You get so many things right and so many things wrong. So edge split was first. Okay. And again, this is where I'm like, developers need to actually try to create stuff like this with the stuff they're developing and not just spheres, because it just seems like if you get the stack right here and then you click the dot and then all the schematics are all mixed up again, then you're not done with the feature. Okay, anyway, so as you can see, the weight map fall off is plugged into both of them. That's my long way of showing you that. It's nice to reuse these sometimes. And there you go. So anyway, for the spike, again, we're going to channel haul this in. We're going to get a bigger strength on our bigger polygon. So we're going to push in to get a sort of an indent effect here. And, we're just modulating that on the size of the polygon, or the polygon area there. So it looks pretty good. And then we are going to create another selection set. So assigned selection set. Now this is, again, where I'm going to complain, because I'm doing an assigned selection set. One already exists in the scene. There it is right there. The thing is, the 99% case is I'm not going to use the same mesh operation again. Why would I reassign a selection set that's already been assigned? It is sometimes nice to use an existing operation like we did right here, but it should not be my first option. And the problem is you get multiple subdivides in a scene or multiple assigned selection sets, and we'll have several of them. You're going to get multiple ones at the top that are existing, and the one that you want is going to be at the bottom of this list. And what you tend to do when you're creating these things is you're trying to work fast, and you keep clicking the one at the top. But all you're doing is reusing something you've already done. It's messing up your stack, and then you delete it, but you don't realize if you delete it, it deletes it all throughout your stack because it's one that you've already used before, so it's in there multiple times. It's just a bad design, and it shouldn't be like this. So anyway, adding the new one, make sure you get new, not existing. You'll be hearing me say that a lot. Okay, vertex, and we'll call this corners. And then what we're doing is we're going to grab by, okay, here again. So I've got the word ass in my search field because I was searching for a assigned selection set, and now it just keeps the word ass there. And it's, again, looking into existing. I don't want a search term. I want to go right to my selection operations. If I'm clicking add selection, I want to go to my selection operations. I don't want a search term in there from the last mesh operation I selected, and I don't want to be an existing. Foundry people. Okay. Select my previous operation. And this is turning to one giant bitch session, isn't it? Spike. So, and, you know, the thing is like you do these cool things, but it's just such a pain in the ass. All right, I want the center point, and then I want to invert it. And so here in green, you'll see I've got these guys. Oh, by the way, if you don't have ghosting on, it won't show you that. It only shows you that selection operations if you have ghosting on. Again, I don't, why? I don't know what the thinking is there, but you know, that's what we want. We want these corners because we're going to end up using these later for that push that does the edge curling. So now we've got that created. That's great. That's awesome. It's created. I want to deselect this map here, so I'm gonna have to look at it and close my schematic. And I'm gonna subdivide this again. So add, and we'll do a subdivide. Again, the search terms, I'm not sure I agree with this. Like, okay, fine, unsubdivide is there as well as subdivide because it has the word sub in it. Have no idea why set edge weight is in there. It doesn't have sub in that anywhere. So why is that showing up in the search? Also, if I do something like, you know, I want to triangulate. Well, detriangulate has the word try in it, as well as symmetrize, as well as triangulate, but detriangulate comes up first, I guess, because D is before T, but I'm really searching for T. I don't know, it's just a weird, it seems like if I type in try, triangulate should be the first one, not the last one here. Okay. Just need to submit this entire video to Foundry's bug reports. Okay, so we want to subdivide, and we want that subdivide to not be Catmull Clark, but just faceted. Would be fantastic to have a subdivide iterations here, but we don't, so we have to add it again. Now here I'm just going to keep complaining. I can right-click on this and select duplicate, and because it's in a mesh op stack, it will do the right thing and put it above it. So we got another subdivide here. Now, if this was not in a stack, it would do the wrong thing and put it below it. Not that it really matters with subdivide, but it would matter with something like bevel to. There's no reason you would ever want to add an operation and have it occur before the previous operation you just did. So that it's a bug in every instance in MODO where you're not using a stack. So it's another reason to use a stack. If I don't duplicate it, I just hit add deformer and I have subdivide. It's going to again give me the existing as a first option. I don't want to reapply my existing one. I don't know. I'm just, again, I'm complaining about the same stuff over and over, but anyway, we want another subdivide. And we want this also to be faceted. So now we've got a couple subdivides and we are ready for our thicken. So add a thicken operation. Also, like okay, everybody's going to turn this video off because all I'm doing is complaining. Again, add operator. Unless you're maximized, it jumps up to the top of the screen, which is annoying. Why do I have to click a button? Why can't I just hit tab? Tab shouldn't do anything in this. You can have, shortcut keys operate differently depending on what viewport they're in. Obviously, tab creates subdivision services, toggles that in the 3D viewport. But every nodal program created on planet Earth brings up your node browser when you press tab, except MODO. Instead, I have to keep pushing this damn button over and over and then moving it down into the video screen and then, typing in here. I should just be able to hit tab and continue typing without having to hit a button, move my hand from my stylus over to my keyboard, move it down, then start typing, and then hit return, and then coming over here. And here it didn't even add it to the stack, but okay, yep, that's the type of video it's going to be. It's going to be me complaining. I think I could turn down this wireframe opacity a bit here. All right, so again, you could just do channel haul, and we can offset our scale or offset our thicken here a little bit, and we really want a negative offset, not a positive offset, because we want to push back into the model a little bit and sort of cover up those gaps. Again, the problem is with these really small ones, we'll get some intersection going on, which is why we like to, why we created that weight map fall off to modulate this. So we'll do the weight map fall off again. We'll do existing. Actually, we'll do a, again, I have to delete my search term there. We'll do a new one, weight map fall off, because we may adjust the fall off amount, so we don't want to reuse it. So we'll do weight map fall off. And then we will, turn off channel haul. Pick our area weight map, and that's going to obviously change the thicken amount based on the size of the polygon, which is cool. And, you know, here we may want to remodulate that with this, this guy here, and maybe get, you know, get our little ones to thicken a little more. We just don't, you know, around here is where we get those intersections, so we can middle mouse this guy up until these guys get thicker but don't necessarily intersect. So that looks pretty good. So we closed our gaps pretty good, and yeah, so it looks pretty good. I like it. Good job. Okay. Now let's go in and create another selection set. Now we don't necessarily have to create a selection set for this. What we're going to do is we're going to UV these newly created edges here, because they don't exist in our UV map that we created way down here. And I could just create a new UV map, and with a selection set, I can, you know, select these guys with a select by previous and using the thicken. But I think I'm going to create a polygon selection set of these guys anyway before I do that, and use that selection set in the UV operation, because I may use that selection set for shading, or to maybe I want to subdivide those, or, you know, run a loop slash through those guys later or something like that. So we'll just do another assign selection set. Again, not existing. Go down here to new, and we'll do a polygon 1, and we'll call these sides. Let's do sides. And we want to do a selection operation, a select by previous. So selection operation, clear out your search term, select by previous operation, and then we want to pick thicken, and we want to do the sides. And so we have this selection operation here. So let's go to our stats and make sure this works. I usually go to stats and check just to make sure our selection operation is working. And so here we are. There are the sides. Look good. And so I'm going to do the... now, MODO is still operating fairly quick here. And so I really think the major slowdown is with the Pack UVs. And maybe that just is rerunning that operation constantly. I don't know. Maybe that's where the bug is. Okay, now you may be asking why I am creating another UV operation when I already did one, you know, way back here, right? And the reason is, you know, way back here, when I did this one, we'll just turn off or turn on ghosting, the polygons were very flat, and they weren't subdivided yet, they weren't spiked yet, they weren't, you know, so I got, you know, really nice flat planar UVs with the Atlas map. And, you know, then when I subdivided them, you know, that UV map went along for the ride. So they're nice and planar still for the most part. And, you know, when I come up here, I'm just going to do another UV map. Again, don't create existing. Come down here to a new one. So we want a create UV map right here. And so, boom. And you'll see it sort of recreated everything, right? And so we want to use our, first of all, we want to turn it to Atlas. And then again, I liked my original ones before it was, you know, distorted a bit with the spike command. So I'm just going to do a selection, and I'm going to clear out my previous search term. And I'm going to do a select by selection set. And I'm going to pick my sides selection set. And so if I turn on, you can see the selection set here. So I'm just doing this on the sides, and I'm going to be doing a Atlas map on the sides there, and there you see them pop in. And now I'm going to, and also when you're creating this UV map, you just, you know, keep it in, you're not creating texture, it's already been created when you created this one down here. This texture name for this UV map texture. You could have, of course, if you're not a MODO user, you can have as many UV maps in MODO. You can name them whatever you want. It's a great UV system. And what we're doing, we're not creating a new one. We're just using one that already exists and throwing those UVs in there as well. And then we're going to pack them. And here's where MODO is going to slow down like crazy. So I'm going to pack these UVs. And at this point, I'm dragging these over because if I just double click, I think, you know, sometimes it doesn't take, and I do it multiple times, I get multiple ones, so I'm going to drag this over when MODO starts to slow down. And here's where it's getting really slow. And so now I'm getting the spinny circle, and it's going to be a minute for these to pack, so I'm going to pause. Okay, got my map all packed, looking good. I'm going to close my UV window. All right, before I move on, I'm going to turn off Pack UVs because I think it's the culprit. And I'm going to turn that back on just in the final model. So let's get on with our creating a weight map and getting these corners here curled up a little bit. So add to the deformer stack, and we'll do a set weight. Make sure you do a new one, not an existing one. And we'll call this weight map, let's call it edge, or I don't know, corner push, or just corner. Corner's fine. I think we have a selection set called corner, but we'll just call it corner. And select the map. You can see it's the whole thing, but we're going to modulate this with a selection set that we created earlier. So, whoops. I add the selection set, clear out my typing there. Select by selection set. And then that selection set's name will be, I think, corners. Again, would be nice to have a drop down here. I'm not sure why I have to look over here to make sure if I spelled it right or whatever. Corners with a capital C. Corners with a capital C. All right. And so we have that, and we go to set weight, and we select the map. We can see that it's there. Gonna grow that selection by 1. So we'll just do grow, GR, grow shrink. There we go. And we'll add 1 step there. So we'll just add that like that and take a look at our weight map. Again, do I have to select that guy again? Okay, looking good. And let's smooth this out just a little bit. In fact, I think I'm going to grow 1 more. I didn't do this on the previous guy, but I think I'm going to grow 1 more. Just do this one a little bit differently maybe. And why do I have to keep selecting this map? It's weird. Anyway, so yeah, that's all right. So now let's go ahead and smooth this weight map. So smooth weight. So this is operating quite a bit faster. So definitely think that the Pack UVs was the culprit, although it's still kind of slow. Like I'm pretty sure I double clicked that, didn't do anything. So I'll drag it over just to make sure. Thinks for a little bit. All right, that's fine. So select map. We're going to do what I call this weight map. Again, it'd be nice to have a drop down. We called it corner. So I'll copy and paste that in here. And we'll do count maybe 2. So we get a nice soft weight map there, right? And then we're going to do another push deformer. So push, again, make sure you do a new deformer, not an existing. So we'll do push. I'm just going to drag it over here. And this can be interesting because you can actually do multiple fall-offs, right? So again, MODO is got, you know, I know I'm complaining a lot about it right now, but does some really nice stuff with these fall-offs. So I can do the weight map fall-off. So we'll do the weight map fall-off, not existing. Do a new one. Drag that in there. And a weight map fall off will be, here we have a drop down corner. And if we look at push, I think we can keep this to vertex, and we'll just do, let's make this kind of big just to show how it's working. We'll just do like 0.1. And you'll see these corners all popping out, right? But, you know, inside it, you know, none of this stuff is. It's just these corners popping out. 0.1 is way too big, obviously. It should be really subtle. So let's do 0.01. And looking better. I think we can maybe even do less than that, maybe 0.05. And what's interesting is, you know, so here we're pushing out quite a bit on these little ones, but we can actually add another weight map. We can add another weight map fall off, a new one, and drag that in. And actually, my bad, let's do a fall off blend. So we're going to drag that in. There's my blend fall off, and it looks like it maybe replaced the one I had there. So inside my blend fall off, we'll add a weight map fall off. And we have 2 weight maps we can deal with, right? We have this corner map, and we also have our, they're going to let me drag, or do I have to double click? We have this one, we'll call weight map fall off corner. Just WM fall off corner to keep these straight. We'll pick our corner weight, and then we'll add another one, a new weight map fall off. Double click that, and we'll call this WM fall off area, and we'll do it by area. And our blend is going to multiply these together. So we'll have here is the combined effect of pushing out on these corners, you know, multiplied by the area. So the corners of the biggest polygons will push out more than the corners of the smallest polygons, or the smallest polygon islands at this point, right? So it's a decent way of doing that. So let's look at our push effect and see how much of an effect we're getting. We'll probably have to bump it up a little bit because we have so much fall off going on. So let's go 0.02. Let's see what that looks like. So decent amount of pushing, you know, on these big ones, and the little ones, you know, getting a little intersection there. So let's back this off a little bit, maybe 0.015. Not bad, maybe just 0.01. And there's a lot of control. Again, I can go back into these weight map fall-offs that I'm using, this blending together here, and I can adjust their easing gradients and, you know, again, like weight them more towards the large ones or more towards the small ones. But I think I'm getting what I want there. It's quite a bit on some of these guys, but that's okay. Maybe I'll knock it down just a little bit more. 0.008, and yeah, okay. And go down here to my spike. I'm actually going to knock this off by 3 millimeters as well. There we go. Okay. Go back to my mesh op stack. That's actually, yeah, that's looking pretty good. So our little doggie's looking pretty good here. I think I did one more subdivide. So new subdivide here. And this one, instead of a, we don't want Catmull Clark, I don't think, because it really rounds those corners. But I think we could do a smooth versus a faceted. Now here's where you can kind of decide what you want to do. So there's my smooth subdivide, and after this I had just added a another mesh op to convert these to Catmull Clark, and there's enough. You know, we've got this edge down the middle now, so it's going to be a little bit, you know, it's not going to have these giant gaps anymore. It's going to look a little more organic. But you can use, you know, if you wanted to, you can do some edge slice mesh ops on these guys. Let me just turn off the subdivide. Remember, we have that selection set that is just these edge polygons that we created earlier for the UV map. We've got all of these guys in a selection set, and we can use that to do like a loop slice on there if we want to sort of add some hold edges, or you should be able to do, convert this to edges in a mesh op where you can do the polygon a selection set and then do a boundary of it to get the edges here, and should be able to probably create a selection set of that, or just create a edge weight, procedural edge weight on those guys as well if you want to. I don't actually think we need to do any of that. You're welcome to experiment with it. I'm just going to add one more deformer to this stack, and that'll be a set polygon type. And I'm going to create, set those to Catmull Clark subdivision surfaces now. And then I'll turn on my Pack UVs, which I think is our slowdown culprit. So Catmull Clark. And come on, baby. This one's pretty damn slow too. Yeah, here MODO's like whiting out because it's thinking very hard here. Okay, so yeah, do we have it? Not quite yet. Not quite yet. Oh, now we're blanking out again. Okay, there it is. So, and yeah, there's my final fox. And so actually, like I said, I kind of like these weight maps. Maybe you could use that for shading, just to shade the larger polygons differently. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing to do. I just unselect that now. You can also, you could use these guys for shading as well. So again, it's nice to have those weight maps in there. Yeah, looking pretty good. So I'm going to turn Pack UVs back on, and then I'm going to right click this guy, and I'm going to say duplicate and freeze my mesh operations so I can have a frozen guy, keep my procedure one, but have a frozen guy. that I can go ahead and get in there and do some really fast operations for shading and render tests and things like that without having to deal with this whole stack. So, okay, so a lot of complaining by Greg on this one. I usually don't do that, but if this first video of mine you've watched, you're like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? He's just bitching the whole time. But honestly, this is something to maybe send to Foundry just so they can see the speed issues and the issues with add operator. You know, it's just not very smart, right? In terms of clearing out this field or going right to the selection sets if that's what you're trying to get, or not putting the previous ones first. Or, you know, if I want to do a merge mesh operation, then I want to see my existing meshes and not default to new meshes, because who wants to create meshes to merge mesh? Some people may do that a bit occasionally, but the 99% use case of merge mesh is to merge existing meshes. So that's what should pop up when I do a merge mesh, not a list of existing meshes in the scene. So it needs to be smarter. But yeah, I'm done complaining. I'm done complaining. Thank you to the Lilly exclamation point for the Fox model, and have fun making your own paper mache animals. Wahoo!
Yum, yum!